The boy who fought shadows the night was quiet in Belgium, but inside a small apartment the air was heavy. A young boy sat near the window, his eyes following the lights on the street below. His name was Jean-Claude Van Damme. To the world later he would become a hero, an icon of action cinema. But tonight, he was only a boy with big dreams and trembling doubts. His father worked long hours, his mother worried often, and money was always short. The boy had books, but he could not focus. His heart was restless, chasing something invisible. At school, children laughed at his thin frame and soft voice. They called him weak, too fragile to matter. Each word cut deeper than a knife, and each insult pressed a question into his chest. Was he meant to be invisible forever? Suspense was building in his life, like the silence before a storm. He discovered martial arts almost by accident, walking past a small dojo hidden in a narrow street. From outside, he heard the sound of fists striking pads, feet thudding against the mat, voices shouting discipline. Something inside him stirred, like a flame waking in the dark. He entered shyly, the master watching him with curious eyes. The boy bowed, awkward and unsure. The master nodded, and in that moment, something shifted. But the path ahead was not easy. Training was brutal. The other students were stronger, faster, confident. Van Damme struggled. His kicks were clumsy, his punches weak, his balance poor. Every night he walked home with bruises on his body and heavier bruises on his spirit. Sometimes he thought of giving up. Sometimes he cried when no one was watching. But something inside him whispered, "Keep going." The suspense deepened when one evening he overheard his parents. His father sighed, saying, "He is too soft, too dreamy. Martial arts will break him." His mother tried to defend him, but her voice was tired. The boy stood in the hallway, tears burning his eyes. He wanted to prove them wrong, but fear pressed on him like a shadow. So he trained harder. Early mornings, long nights, endless repetition. When others left the dojo, he stayed behind, kicking until his legs shook, punching until his knuckles bled. Pain became his teacher. Discipline became his friend. Slowly, he changed. His body grew stronger, his movements sharper, but more than that, his spirit grew. He began to understand that martial arts was not only about fighting others, it was about fighting the weakness inside himself. Still, the world outside did not change easily. At school, bullies continued to corner him. One day, a bigger boy shoved him against the wall, mocking his dreams of being strong. Van Damme looked into his eyes and felt the fire inside. He did not fight back, not because he was weak, but because he was learning control. He walked away, his fists trembling, but his heart steady. That night, lying on his bed, he whispered to himself, "I will not let them decide who I am." Years passed, and Van Damme entered competitions. At first, he lost. Defeat after defeat tried to crush him, but each loss taught him patience. Each fall taught him how to rise. Finally, he began to win. Medals glimmered around his neck, but the real treasure was not gold. It was the respect he earned for himself. Yet even as victories came, a new storm was waiting. His heart was restless again, whispering of something bigger. He looked at movie posters in the city, heroes larger than life on glowing screens. Something inside him said, "That is where you must go." But how could a boy from Belgium reach the heart of cinema in America? How could he dream so far? The suspense grew when he told his parents. His father frowned deeply. "Hollywood? That is madness. You have a good future here. Do not throw it away." His mother's eyes filled with worry. "It is too far, too risky." But the boy had become a man now, and his heart refused to shrink. He knew the road would be cruel. He knew he would face hunger, rejection, loneliness. Yet he felt that same flame, brighter than before. So one morning, carrying only a suitcase, a little money, and an ocean of dreams, Van Damme stepped onto a plane bound for America. As the plane lifted, He stared out the window, his chest tight with fear and hope. He was leaving behind family, safety, and everything familiar. He whispered softly, "This is my fight now." And so began the hardest chapter of his journey. Hunger in Hollywood. The plane touched down in Los Angeles, and Jean-Claude stepped into a world far louder, brighter, and harsher than anything he had known. The air smelled different, the streets stretched endlessly, and every face seemed to hurry past without care. He clutched his small suitcase and felt both free and lost. Hollywood. It was supposed to be the land of dreams, but in those first days, it felt more like a desert. He spoke little English. His wallet was thin. He had no friends, no promises, only the fire of his dream. He walked the streets, staring at posters of movie stars, their faces shining above him like gods. "Someday," he whispered, "someday I will be there." But the city did not answer. It only demanded rent, food, and survival. The first nights he slept in cheap motels. When money grew tighter, he slept in his car, sometimes even on the floor of a friend's small apartment. Hunger became a shadow he carried everywhere. He skipped meals to save money, drinking water to quiet the growling in his stomach. Still, every morning he trained. In small parks, on empty streets, anywhere he could stretch and kick, he practiced. People stared, some laughed, some ignored him. But he kept going. Sweat dripped, muscles ached, but discipline was the only thing he owned that could not be stolen. The suspense of his struggle grew sharper when rejection arrived. He went to casting offices, standing in long lines with hundreds of others. When his turn came, directors glanced at him, shook their heads, or muttered, "Your accent is too strong. You're not what we want." Each rejection stabbed at him. Sometimes he walked out smiling, pretending it was nothing, but once alone he clenched his fists and fought back tears. "Am I fooling myself?" he wondered. Yet, there were small moments of kindness. One restaurant owner, noticing his empty pockets, gave him free bread and coffee when he came by. A fellow martial artist offered him a corner of the gym to practice. Strangers who owed him nothing showed quiet humanity. Those moments gave him strength. There was a night when he almost gave up. Sitting alone on a curb under the cold streetlight, his body weak with hunger, he whispered, "Maybe my father was right. Maybe this dream is too big." His hands shook, not from fear but from exhaustion. He thought of buying a ticket back home. Then across the street he saw a small child walking with his mother. The boy was holding a poster of a superhero, his eyes wide with hope. Van Damme watched, and something inside him stirred again. He remembered being that boy once, dreaming, believing. He clenched his jaw and said to himself, "If I go back now, I betray that boy. I betray myself." So he stayed. The city tested him further. Months passed. Auditions came and went. He found work delivering pizzas, moving furniture, cleaning floors. His body, that had once stood tall in martial arts competitions, now bent under cheap labor. But he did it, because survival was part of the fight. Then came a turning point. One afternoon, while training in a small gym, a man walked in. He was connected to Hollywood, scouting for talent. He stopped, watching Van Damme perform a perfect split between two chairs, his kicks slicing the air with speed and precision. "You," the man said, pointing. "What's your name?" Van Damme hesitated, his heart racing. "Jean-Claude." "You have something," the man said. "Something different." It was not a promise. It was not a contract. But it was a spark. After months of darkness, someone finally saw him. That night, Van Damme lay awake, staring at the ceiling of the tiny room he rented. His stomach still ached from hunger, but his spirit felt fed for the first time in months. "This city has tried to break me," he whispered. But I will not bend. I will rise. He thought of his parents, of the dojo in Belgium, of the boy who once cried because others called him weak. He thought of the countless hours of training, of bruises and rejections, of hunger and loneliness. All of it had shaped him, forged him like steel in fire. The suspense of his journey was far from over. Hollywood would demand more pain, more sacrifice, more patience. But for the first time, Van Damme felt he was no longer invisible. And deep inside, he knew this was only the beginning of his fight. The first crack of light, the days turned into months, and months into years. Hollywood was still a fortress with walls too high for most to climb, but Jean-Claude refused to step away. The small spark he had received, that stranger noticing him at the gym, was like oxygen to his fire. He held on to it, even when the city tried to drown his hope again. Every morning he trained, his body carving strength out of exhaustion. Every evening he worked odd jobs, sweeping floors, unloading trucks, doing whatever would keep a roof over his head. Hunger was still there, but he had learned to fight it with discipline. Then one night, opportunity came in an unexpected way. He was walking along Sunset Boulevard when he noticed a crowd near a small film set. His eyes widened as he saw cameras, lights, and actors moving under the director's command. He stood there, frozen, his heart racing. He whispered to himself, "One day, it will be me." A stunt coordinator noticed him watching. Maybe it was his build. Maybe it was the way his eyes burned with hunger. Not for food this time, but for purpose. The man asked, "You fight?" Jean-Claude nodded. "Yes, karate, kickboxing." "Show me," the man said. Right there on the street, Van Damme performed a series of kicks, fast, precise, powerful. The small crowd clapped. The stunt coordinator raised his eyebrow and said, "Come tomorrow. Maybe we use you." It was not a big role, not even close. It was background stunt work, faceless fighting in shadows, a body thrown in a quick scene. But for Jean-Claude, it was a crack of light through a closed door. His first paycheck from Hollywood was small, barely enough to cover rent. But when he held it in his hand, he felt tears rise in his eyes. He whispered, "This is proof. I am not invisible anymore." Suspense filled his heart again. He knew this was not success yet. This was survival, but now survival had a name: progress. Still, Hollywood was not kind. Weeks of stunt work would be followed by months of silence. He knocked on doors, waited in long lines, begged for auditions. Rejection was constant. Some laughed at his accent. Others said his face was not the kind they wanted. But one thing kept him different: his humility. Even when ignored, he bowed, thanked them for their time, and walked away without anger. He carried respect in his heart, even for those who dismissed him. Deep down, he believed that kindness would one day return to him. Then came a meeting that would change his path. While training at a gym, he was introduced to a producer who had connections in the action film world. The producer watched him move, the way his kicks snapped like lightning, the way his body held both strength and grace. "You remind me of a tiger in a cage," the producer said. "But Hollywood likes big names, not unknowns." Jean-Claude bowed respectfully. "One day, I will be known. I only ask for a chance." The producer smiled slightly. "You have courage, maybe too much, but let us see what you can do." This chance did not arrive as a starring role. It came as more stunt work, more faceless appearances, but the whisper of possibility was growing louder. And then, a moment of destiny. One afternoon, he heard that Chuck Norris was shooting a film in town. Jean-Claude knew he could not waste it. He found a way onto the set, slipping past barriers, his heart thundering in his chest. When he saw Chuck Norris, he approached carefully, bowing with respect. "Mr. Norris," he said softly, "I came here to watch, to learn. Norris studied him for a moment, then asked, "You fight?" Jean-Claude nodded. He demonstrated a few moves, sharp and fast. Chuck Norris smiled faintly. "You have something. Keep training. The industry is hard, but if you stay humble, doors will open." Those words became fuel. They were not a promise, but they were recognition from a man he admired deeply. That night, lying on his small bed, Jean-Claude whispered, "If Chuck Norris believes I have something, then I cannot quit." Still, his journey was not free of darkness. Loneliness was his constant companion. Letters from home reminded him of the family he missed. Sometimes guilt tore at him. Had he abandoned them for a selfish dream? But then he thought of the boy he once was, mocked for being weak, and he knew this fight was bigger than himself. It was about proving that even the weakest boy could rise. The emotional turning point came one evening when he received a letter from his mother. In it, she wrote, "We worry for you. We fear for you. But we are proud that you have not lost your heart. Stay kind, my son, no matter how hard the world becomes." Jean-Claude read those words again and again, tears streaming down his face. He realized that his dream was not only about films or fame, it was about carrying respect, humility, and love through every battle. As the city lights flickered outside his window, he clenched his fists and whispered, "I will make it, not just for me, but for everyone who believed I couldn't." Hollywood still waited, cold and unwelcoming. But now, he was no longer a stranger. He had left footprints, and soon he would leave a mark. The door finally opens. Hollywood had given him crumbs, and he had accepted them with humility. But Jean-Claude knew crumbs were not enough. Inside him burned the belief that one day he would not just be a stuntman in the shadows, he would be the face on the poster, the hero on the screen. The city tested him again and again. Weeks passed without work. He knocked on casting doors, left photographs that ended up in trash bins, repeated his pitch until the words felt broken in his mouth. Some people laughed at his accent, others at his dream. "Leading man," they said. "Not with that voice, not with that face." But he did not fight back with anger. Instead, he trained harder. He ran through the streets at night, muscles burning. He kicked until his legs shook, punched until his arms went numb. He whispered to himself, "If I cannot change their eyes, I will make my spirit impossible to ignore." Then came the day that would change everything. A small film company was struggling with an unfinished project, an action movie that lacked the right spark. Their lead actor had left, and the production was drowning. Jean-Claude heard about it through whispers at a gym. Without hesitation, he marched to the office. The producer looked at him skeptically. "Who are you?" Jean-Claude bowed slightly. "I am an actor. I am a fighter. Give me 5 minutes and I will show you." The producer sighed, but nodded. 5 minutes. Jean-Claude stepped into the empty studio. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting silence build suspense. Then he unleashed. Kicks flying, spins cutting the air, his body moving like poetry carved in muscle. He dropped into a perfect split, holding the pose with steady breath. The producer's eyes widened. For the first time, someone in Hollywood did not see a stranger. They saw a possibility. "You're different," the producer muttered. "Maybe crazy, but different." Soon after, Jean-Claude was offered his first lead role in a low-budget martial arts film. It was not glamorous. The sets were cheap, the cameras old, the script simple. But for him, it was gold. He poured every ounce of himself into it. Every kick was delivered with precision. Every scene carried the weight of years of struggle. When the film was released, something unexpected happened. Audiences noticed him. Critics might not have praised the story, but they could not ignore the presence of this new fighter with lightning in his legs and fire in his eyes. Whispers began. "Who is this man? Where did he come from?" Success did not arrive overnight, but the door had opened. Yet with recognition came new struggles. Fame was not the warm light he imagined. It was sharp, blinding, and heavy. Reporters asked cruel questions. Producers demanded more, faster, bigger. Money tempted him, pulling him in directions he did not always want to go. He felt the danger of losing himself. There was a night after his first taste of success when he sat alone in his small apartment, surrounded by newspaper clippings and film posters with his name. He should have felt victorious, but instead he felt a strange emptiness. He whispered, "Is this it? Is this all I dreamed of?" Then he remembered his mother's letter, the words about kindness, humility, respect. He closed his eyes and promised, "No matter how big the screen gets, I will not forget who I am. I will not forget the boy who cried in Belgium, the boy who fought shadows." The suspense grew again when Hollywood offered him bigger films. With them came pressure. Audiences expected perfection. Studios demanded profit, and every mistake was magnified. His accent, once mocked, was now imitated. His unique style, once doubted, was now celebrated. But inside, he carried both pride and fear. He began to understand that fame was another kind of fight, not against hunger, not against rejection, but against arrogance, loneliness, and the temptation to forget his roots. And so, in the middle of his rising stardom, Van Damme made a vow. He would fight to remain humble, to respect the people who helped him climb, and to never let the light blind him to what mattered most: family, resilience, and love. The boy who once stood outside a dojo window in Belgium was now on posters across the world. But the true fight was only beginning. The fight within Hollywood had opened its gates, and Jean-Claude Van Damme was no longer the invisible boy from Belgium. He was now a star, his name printed on glowing posters, his films filling theaters across the world. Children imitated his kicks, fans shouted his name, producers called him their next big action hero. On the outside, he had everything he once dreamed of. But on the inside, a new storm began to rise. Fame came with weight. The schedules were brutal, the pressure endless. He trained harder than ever, his body pushed beyond limits. Yet no amount of strength could guard his heart against the loneliness that fame often brings. Friends turned distant. Trust became fragile, and whispers followed him everywhere. There were nights when he stood in front of the mirror, his reflection covered in sweat after long hours of training. He would stare into his own eyes and ask quietly, "Who am I now? Am I still the boy who fought shadows? Or have I become a shadow myself?" The suspense of his life was no longer about survival in Hollywood. It was about survival within his own spirit. Mistakes came. Fame made them louder. His personal struggles became public, his failures magnified. For a moment, it seemed as if the world wanted to see him fall, the same way it once doubted he could rise. But here lay his greatest fight, not in the ring, not on a film set, but in his soul. In those dark times, he returned to the teachings of martial arts. He remembered his master's voice. Strength is not in the punch. It is in the patience. It is in the respect you carry for yourself and for others. So, step by step, he began to rebuild. He reconnected with family, realizing that fame without love was emptiness. He reached out to old friends, offering kindness even when distance had grown between them. He spoke openly about his struggles, showing humility instead of hiding behind pride. Fans expected a hero who could not break, but what they received was something greater. A man who admitted that even heroes stumble and that true courage is standing up again. Slowly, the world began to see not just the action star, but the human being. They saw the boy from Belgium who once cried alone, the man who starved on Hollywood streets, the fighter who never stopped believing. And in this truth lay the transformation that mattered most. Not the fame, not the money, not even the trophies, but the humanity. In an interview years later, when asked what his greatest victory was, Van Damme smiled softly. "Not the films," he said. "My greatest victory was learning that strength is nothing without kindness, and fame is nothing without humility. I learned to respect others, to respect myself, and to keep love in my heart." The room went silent. His words carried more weight than any kick, more power than any punch. His journey, filled with suspense, pain, and triumph, ended not with a fight on screen, but with a reminder to the world. Resilience is not about never falling. It is about rising with humility, again and again. And so, Jean-Claude Van Damme, once the invisible boy fighting shadows, became something more than an action icon. He became a symbol of respect, resilience, and kindness. His story left an echo, a question for every listener to carry. When life tests you, will you fight only for glory, or will you fight to keep your heart alive?